This episode of the Beauty Industry Podcast was brought to you by our Beauty Industry Pro Mentoring membership. Travel through interactive videos with me as we mentor you through self, business, team, and client development, helping you create a thriving beauty business in 2020. Visit the Beauty website for more information. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Shaw. Here we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today's guest you may have seen across social media as she has hundreds of photos of therapists holding up certificates after completing their skin training courses. It's Lia Trebilcock from Skin Education International, a guest who has been requested to feature on the podcast many times by you all, so I am beyond thrilled that I could bring this conversation to light. Lia Trebilcock has been a leader in the skin industry for over 14 years now, starting out as a therapist, and along the way she has owned her own skin clinic and has progressed into national education roles for incredible companies such as InSkin Cosmedics and Jurlique, and she's also studied Naturopathic Nutrition throughout her career. What I love so much about Lia is that, like us, Lia is an independent educator who is not affiliated with any one particular brand. Using a combination of nutritional support, professional treatments, and home care advice to create healthy, vibrant, balanced skins, Lia now travels the country and beyond, helping therapists like you treat their skin concerns one skin at a time. From Skin Education International, today we welcome Lia Trebilcock. Lia, welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I just said to you offline that you've been one of our most heavily requested podcast guests to feature on because I've seen you travel around so much and so many therapists are, posting their photos with their certificates online, and it looks like you're everywhere and just touching so many people in the world of education. So I can imagine why people want to hear from you. So thank you so much for spending time with me this morning.
No, my pleasure. It's so sweet of people to want to hear more. Sometimes I feel like they must get sick of my voice.
Never. Lia, we start the podcast every week with asking our guests how they entered into the beauty industry. I have covered off a little bit in our introduction about your pathway, but I'd love to hear it from you. When and where and why did your introduction start?
Okay, so I started out, as most of us do, studying beauty therapy, and I studied in 2002. I grew up in South Australia, so I studied at good old Adelaide TAFE, and I was pretty much lucky enough that within about 6 months of qualifying, stepped into having my own clinic, and when I started, it was just little old me in there, and I was working alongside a brand called Janess, who some people might know, but they're founded by a lady called Jan Smith, who is a naturopath but also an amazing beauty therapist. She had her own beauty therapy college for a long time too. And the way that it worked as a partner of hers for a long time was that I was almost the middle person between the skin naturopaths and the clients. So I did a whole bunch of extra training with them, and a client would come to me with a skin concern. I'd been trained how to do basically a naturopathic consult with the client. So I'd capture all of the information, send it through to the naturopath that would have a good look at what they thought was going on, if they needed to do some testing or what might be lacking in their diet. And they would send back a program, and then I would step through that program with the client to help them understand what was going on in their body, why their skin was presenting as it was, and what we would do about it. And of course, part of that was doing treatments for them in line with the program. So I guess at the time, in 2002, when I came out of beauty college, the most amount of information I was really given as far as dealing with skin conditions was, okay, if you have an acneic client, then put them on a gel cleanser and an oil-free moisturizer, and that's a really good solution. So I didn't really come out of beauty college with much hope or thinking that I had much power to make an impact in the skin. So when I started working with these naturopaths, I was pretty blown away with what we were achieving on all of these skins that I kind of thought in my head I couldn't do much about. So that was really exciting. And after working with alongside them for a year or two, I decided that I wanted to be able to do what they were doing. So I enrolled in a naturopathic course as well, predominantly focusing on nutrition, because that was where I guess most of my interest lied. And that's really helped me throughout my career, I guess, understanding the body on a relatively deep level, and I guess even from right back then, understanding that the skin isn't a separate thing, it's part of a body, and we need to treat a body as a whole person with a brain and all of the organs, and the skin is just one of those organs. So if one thing is out of balance, everything is out of balance. So I guess that's kind of where it all started. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that you say that, because I think sometimes even as skin therapist, we forget that the skin connects every single thing on the body, including, you know, the brain, the muscles, the gut. And sometimes we just look at skin on the face, you know, and even my hairdresser will say, oh, you've got a bit of dermatitis in your hair. And I freak out and I think, how can I clear that? And then I think, Tamara, it's just skin. You know how to clear dermatitis, you know, or you know how to assist with it. But sometimes we forget that. So I appreciate that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's so exciting knowing that our industry is heading in that direction now. I mean, back when I started working with skin, we were definitely still recommending essential fatty acids, etc. But that was considered really left field at the time. It was unusual. So now pretty much every clinic that I work with are using essential fatty acids as an internal supplement. Still, there's a lot of knowledge, I think, for a lot of clinics on how to get the best out of that. There's still a bit of missing links there, but a lot of people have really invested in their education and understand how to get the most out of that as well. So it's exciting for me to see that we're starting to see the body as a whole.
Yes. I was saying this just on another episode the other day, but I was having a chat to one of my girlfriends about food, and, you know, I was talking about fish and we get essential fatty acids, and she was like, how do you know all of this? You're a beauty therapist by trade. You're a skin therapist. Why do you know
You
about...
just paint fingernails, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And she was like, how do you know about fish oils and, you know, X, Y, and Z? And I was like, everything we do comes from, you know, that vitamins, that nutrients, that mineral intake, and that's feeding the skin. And she was so blown away. So, you know, I've got such a love of that education, because people just don't know how much we know. And I love that people like you are traveling around the country training this stuff, because a lot of skincare companies are training their brands, or, you know, whole food companies are training on their ingredients, but you're kind of like an impartial part, you know, to the puzzle, which I so love.
Yeah, that was a really big reason why I decided to step away, I guess, from working as an educator for a brand, because I was finding that, you know, if someone would ask me, how do I treat this client's acne? I know exactly what they need to do. But if the brand that I was working with didn't have all of the pieces of that puzzle, as an educator, you can't really ethically say, okay, go out and buy this from this brand and this from this brand. Whereas when I'm an independent person, I can just say, look, this is what needs to happen. You can then go away and look at what you're working with and go, okay, do I have everything? Yes, awesome. Or do I need to add a few things in? And then as a business owner, you can make that decision. So yeah, I think it's exciting to be able to access education that isn't attached to a brand.
Yes.
Yeah, because most of the education in our industry is.
That's exactly right. I want to go back just for a minute, because you then opened your own skin clinic. What made you take that step?
If I'm really honest, I kind of fell into it not really wanting that. I can blame my mother for that one. She kind of said, oh, there's a clinic for sale. I was only 18 at the time, so I was like, well, I'm not buying a clinic. I really just care about going out and partying on the weekend at the time. And she kind of talked me into putting an offer in, which I didn't think would be accepted. And then all of a sudden it was.
Wow.
So it kind of just happened. But I guess, yeah, I ended up finding that I loved it. And I had my first business for 6 years. When I started, as I said at the beginning, it was just me. And by the end of the 6 years, I had 6 full-time staff. And it was in a little town called Victor Harbor, which is where I grew up in South Australia, it was fun. I learned so much. But after 6 years, I was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to see the world now. So yeah, from there I went on and moved to Falls Creek up in the Victorian ski fields, and we opened up a wellness kind of retreat up there. And I went from looking after 6 staff to 20 staff, which was a pretty big kind of change. And then from there I moved down to Melbourne and was working managing Aurora Spa Retreat, and we had 87 staff there, and only 3 of them were men. So it was a lot of estrogen in
Lots
business.
of women in one space.
Yeah. So they were all kind of really fundamental parts, I guess, of of learning the industry and really getting to work with lots of different peoples and lots of different aspects of our industry. So I really worked across, I guess, the holistic health space, the spa space, the skin space. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you've got so much tangible experience behind you, because nowadays everyone with a pedicure is a coach or a consultant or an educator or opening up their own, bloody online thing. But you've actually got, the therapist, the naturopathy, the business owner, the manager. I think that's so hard to come by these days. People want to be the business owner before they've been the therapist. They want to be an educator before they've been the manager. What made you go into that education realm?
For me, when I was working with the business in St Kilda at Aurora Spa Retreat, they actually had their own product range as well. And they were just launching that into Mecca Cosmetica at the time. And I was able to do a lot of training for them with often quite large groups of people on these products. And I found that I just really loved being able to share that knowledge, because I guess as a manager, you're always doing training in some capacity, but it's normally in relatively small groups. And that was the first opportunity I'd had to really speak to a large group of people at once. And, growing up, I was terrified of public speaking, but I found that when I was speaking about something that I was really passionate about and that I loved, I actually really thrived on it. So when I decided that I didn't really want to manage 87 people anymore, and that I've gotten a little bit tired of writing rosters and dealing with kind of staff issues, I'm like, okay, what's the next step? And I was really lucky to fall into a national education role with pretty much no experience in education at all. So I was really lucky. That job was with Jurlique, and I was looking after all of their they have 3 different pathways that they work through. So they have their wholesale accounts, which are separate businesses that just purchase their products. They have all of their department store accounts, and then they have their Jurlique-owned concept stores and salons as well. So I was looking after a huge variety of staff, but they put me through my Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment, which is, I guess, a really great qualification to have if you're going to be a trainer. And they had some really good opportunities for me to learn and grow, and some other great educators that worked within the business. So I was really lucky, and that was where it all kind of started.
Amazing. You mentioned there your certificate in training and assessment, and I actually had a very similar pathway to you in that I was directing a day spa, and then I went straight into education without any true education background experience. I mean, as you say, you train teams every day, you onboard, you induct, you're doing personal and professional development, you're working on the soft skills, but technically there's no real kind of training background. And something I get asked so much is, well, how did you make that transition? And like you, once I was in the space, then I went and got the certificate. Was there anything that you can kind of pin it down to in terms of why people would have chosen you for that role, or if you can give some advice to our audience in maybe how they can go in taking that same pathway?
I think And I don't know, I think what I've seen is that some people have an ability to do this and some people don't. And I think for me, I'm quite lucky because teaching comes easily and naturally for me. I think I can take a whole lot of information and I just need to absorb it and get it clear in my head. And once I've got it clear in my head, I can break it down into really easy things. So the feedback that I get a lot from people who do my courses is that they've heard these things for years and years and years, but they've never made sense. And then the way that I explain it, they go, oh, suddenly I get it. And sometimes these are things that we've been hearing since beauty college, so for years and years and years, but they've never quite clicked. So I think the key to being a great educator is making it understandable for people, because no one, the very first slide in every single course that I do, I let people know that my main goal with any training that I do is that they should walk out from the day feeling really powerful and really excited about what they've learned. My worst nightmare is that anyone leaves feeling like, oh my God, I had no idea what was going on. I felt so lost. I felt so confused. That was overwhelming, because that's not what we go to do education for. We go out to learn and to feel empowered and to go back to our businesses super pumped to put everything that we've learned into action. So I think that's always been my big focus, and I think that's something that if you're wanting to be an educator, if you want people to get on board with your message, you need to be able to make things clear, easy to understand. And also in our industry, we're pushing our information to our clients. So if you've gone and been educated in a really high level way with all this really technical terminology, and then you go and start saying that to your clients, you also just confuse and bamboozle your clients. So they're not online with your program either. So I think that's probably the biggest key. And when I was going for my position, they actually got me to do some role plays of different educations. So I guess maybe that shone through in those demonstrations, and I was lucky enough to get the position. So yeah.
Amazing. I love how you say there, you do have to have two almost different hats when you're an educator, because you need to be able to train people at a top level. Like, yes, every person needs to know the technical side of a cell or whatever you're trying to explain so that they completely understand it. But then you also need to have like analogies or layman's terms so that you can then articulate that to the client, because not every client is going to understand what a melanocyte is, you know. But if you talk about that pigment being a little octopus who has arms which deposit little jelly beans almost, it completely makes sense to them. So I appreciate
that one. I might use that.
Take it away. But I like how you're saying that, because I don't think every educator has that. I've sat in some training sessions which are a snore fest because they're just so high level. And I'm a real person who loves watching how people behave. So when I'm in a class, I'm watching everyone else and I'm thinking, why are they asking that question? Or how come they're asleep? Or what's the educator not doing at the moment? But I've seen that so many times, and it's just too technical. And then, as you said, you've paid all this money, you go somewhere, you leave, and I've slept half the class. I don't even know what I'm saying, yet I've got to go back to my clients and back into my treatment room and either teach the rest of the team, or I've got to try and teach my client now, which I can't do.
Yeah. I think it's hard. I think as an educator, you feel, I mean, and I definitely felt this when I started, you feel like the whole world is watching you and you have to be this, you know, person up on a pedestal and you have to get all of your words right. And you have to be smarter than everybody else. And I always sound like I'm not smarter than any of you. It's just I recite the stuff more, so it's top of my brain. Everything that I teach, everyone could teach and everyone could know as well as I did if they put as much time into it. The only reason it's so easy for me to bang through all of the layers and cells of the skin is because I do it every single week. So it's just, it never has a chance to leave my brain. But I always say when I don't teach as much over December and January and I go back and do my first class in February, I kind of have to go, okay, let me read my notes again before this class, because it's had time to settle down in the back of my brain. And so I think people deal well with honesty and integrity, and you just letting a little bit of your personality shine through. I think what people don't like so much is when you feel, and it's just that ego thing really, isn't it? A lot of people feel like they have to be this performer and they have to be this top line educator, but I think that's actually a big turn off for a lot of people, and people really appreciate authenticity. So Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And when you're getting taught by somebody who is free from ego, they don't think that they're the best educator in the whole of Australia, you connect with them better and you're going to learn from them better anyway. I want
Totally.
to ask you, at Skin Education International, you've got in-person and online training platforms.
Mhm.
Can you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about those?
Sure. So I run courses in most of the capital cities in Australia and also across New Zealand regularly, so people can come along to that. So some people find that they just learn better sitting in a classroom in that environment, having, you know, someone in front of them, being able to ask questions in real time, etc. So that's definitely an option. Of course, with that comes the limitations of the fact that you need to be in that capital city on those right dates. You need to take time out of your business, etc. So it doesn't work for everybody. So when I started, I really wanted to make sure that anyone could kind of access education. I've always tried to keep my prices as low as possible so that it's not out of reach for even new beginning therapists, but also geographically I wanted to be available. So I've got my online courses, which are all, the content is the same as what I teach in a face-to-face class, but they're just pre-recorded videos where I go through and I still draw all the pictures, I still use the same analogies, etc. And the way that the online course works is that you can register at any time, get started at any time. You watch as many or as little videos as you like. And after each video, there's just a quick little multiple choice quiz that just makes sure that you get the key points that we're talking about in that little video. And once you achieve 100% in that, it opens up the next video. So you can just work sequentially through. And then as soon as you've finished, you just let me know and we organise a little video chat or phone chat just like this to go through any questions that you have. And then I send out the certificate. So I've tried to make it as close as possible to the face-to-face classes, but with the flexibility of working online. And this year coming in 2020, I'm actually organising a different option, which is live online classes. So where it would be something really similar to this, where everyone would log in and they can see me, but they can also ask questions and they can interact and they can see my screen. And if they happen to miss a week, so we'll be doing kind of 2-hour blocks. So it would be 2 hours one week and then 2 hours on another week. If they miss a block, it's all pre-recorded, so they can just log in and access the video and watch it at any time, and they can rewatch it as well. So I think the internet is amazing, and all of the options that we have now. I mean, 10 years ago, we just didn't really have that technology. So you really only had one option with education. But now I think there's really no excuse to to not keep learning and developing. Yeah.
Amazing. And so tell me about the second opinion for the consultation part that you do that I've saw on the website. Can anybody just give you a call and ask for a second opinion? How does that option work?
Yeah, so I set this up because what I found is a lot of therapists sometimes just need, you know, a lot of people work by themselves, so they don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of. And some clients are just trickier than others. Sometimes you just need an extra set of eyes and ears to find out what's going on. So what I always offer is that, yeah, if anyone's having trouble, if they're stuck with a client, if they're doing everything that they know and they're just not getting there, we can schedule a call and just go through. And what we'll be talking about is obviously helping me understand where the client is, what's been done so far or what they're thinking about doing. And I'll just give them my opinion, I guess, and guide them and see if there's anything that they're missing or anything that they can add. Or sometimes it's a case of, wow, that's really a case where I think we need to bring a naturopath in and, you know, get to the bottom of what's going on internally, because sometimes even if we're doing everything perfectly as a skin therapist, there's just other stuff going on underlying which is out of our scope. So yeah.
Amazing. And so I'm curious to know then, what's the number one question that you are asked about the skin?
I get a lot of questions about essential fatty acids because I find that's probably one area where there's still a lot of confusion. So that's something that when I started teaching, I was keeping it pretty basic because I kind of thought, okay, we're generally working with beauty therapists, so keep it, give people the information but don't get too complicated. What I've found over the last probably year and a half, I've really dialed up the way that I'm teaching about essential fatty acids, because I think it's incredibly important for skin therapists when they're prescribing supplements to really understand what they're doing. The difference between plant oil supplements and fish oil supplements and what we're getting from each, because they're not the same thing and they don't do the same things within the skin. And if we're, because for any client that works with me, I put them on essential fatty acids and they literally stay on them for the rest of their life. So if you're going to put someone on something like that for such a long time, you need to understand what you're doing and if you're doing the right thing for them. So that's a really big one, and probably a close second to that is skin needling questions, because I find that there's still sometimes a lot of confusion, and I find sometimes the online forums can be a really big stoker for that because there's so many different opinions and so many people that unfortunately haven't actually been educated properly, but we don't know what we don't know. So if they haven't been educated properly, they're going to be hell-bent on their view as the right view because they don't understand that there's other ways of approaching a situation. But also sometimes with skin needling, funny things happen because we're creating a response in the skin, and everybody's skin is individual. So I get a lot of questions around skin needling as well.
Yes, it's interesting that you say the online forums there, because that's essentially why I started Beauté Industry, because I was seeing these online forums, and in my opinion, they were just tearing each other down, and it's interesting that you say skin needling, because there was literally a skin needling question that I saw in a forum last week. And it was, what's this person doing? What mills? They shouldn't be doing this. You're treating out of scope. And it just kept going. And if somebody was watching that, either as a new therapist or an experienced therapist, I would be freaking out and second guessing myself, So I love that you're saying, you do need to be educated. Don't watch everything that you see online as well, but do your own research and come to people like yourself if you do have those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and just support each other. I think we have to remember that no one is intentionally doing the wrong thing. So even if everybody in the world looks at someone and goes, oh my gosh, what are they doing? That's crazy. Why are they doing that to their skin? Then they didn't wake up that morning and go, I'm going to ruin somebody's skin. That person is still doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have. So rather than tearing them apart, just educate them, just help them understand why, and maybe help them understand that there's other ways of approaching it. I think that's a much better way, because ultimately we can grow together as an industry or we can fail together. And with something like skin needling, if we all keep doing the wrong thing, eventually it will be taken out of our hands, which obviously we don't want. So I think, there's a big scope for helping each other out and supporting each other.
Yes, absolutely. What is something that you think therapists should know about the skin but perhaps don't?
I think probably the biggest area, and we're definitely getting better with this as an industry, but it's just the importance of the good old stratum corneum. I think it's been, we've kind of gone through these fluxes over the years of changes in the way that we approach skincare and skin treatments. And there was definitely a phase where it was all about acids and exfoliation and let's rip that stratum corneum off. It's just dead cells. We don't need it. And we know so much more than that now. We realize now that top layer, that stratum corneum, those cells aren't dead. They're actually doing really important things, and their health dictates the health of every single thing underneath them. So I think that's been one of the biggest changes, but there are still a lot of people out there that haven't quite clicked into that mindset yet. So I think if you're still doing a lot of microdermabrasion, even if it's hydrodermabrasion, they're all doing the same thing. If we're doing epiblading, if we're doing things like that and not really understanding what's going on underneath the surface of the skin, it's probably a good idea to learn a little bit more about that layer and its role in skin health.
Yes, good idea. Actually, I was talking to Lauren Curtin the other day on the podcast. She's a naturopath, and she was saying that any inflammation we put on the skin now can actually have a linked inflammation to the gut, which we know has a linked inflammation to the brain. So it's really crazy how far, you know, skin education and the treatments have come since we've kind of been in this industry. I wonder,
it's all one organ.
That's exactly right. Is there any treatments that you personally would not perform on the skin?
I'm going to try not to be too controversial there. There's a lot of things that I personally wouldn't perform on the skin, but in saying that, I believe that there's a place for everything. It's just knowing what that place is, and I think it's so important to understand what you're actually doing to the skin. There's a lot of treatments out there at the moment, so I'm not saying that I would never do microdermabrasion, but across my career as a skin therapist, I've probably met 2 skins that needed a microdermabrasion. Wow. And they definitely didn't need them for the rest of their life. They needed a couple to get their skin back into a certain state, and then we keep it healthy. So for me, epiblading kind of comes into that category because it's really doing a lot of damage to that stratum corneum, which is going to dictate the health of the skin underneath it. And once again, that doesn't mean it's the wrong treatment for everybody, but we have to understand which skins are actually going to become healthier and stronger from that, or weaker and more damaged and have to recuperate. So I think everything we do, we have the choice to make the body and the skin healthier, better, more vibrant, or we have the choice to damage it and hope that the damaged skin looks more like we want it to. But for me, I'm always going, is it making the skin better or is it damaging the skin? And that's where I come back to. I think one of the big ones for people to be aware of at the moment is the plasma treatments. I've got a lot of concerns about the safety and also what that's doing to the skin, because it's creating columns of scar tissue, which, yes, can make the skin look really nice and firm and tight because it's creating contracture scarring because it's a heat-based injury. But it's, you know, scar tissue is what we call non-functioning tissue. It doesn't have capillaries, it doesn't have nerve fibers, it doesn't function as skin should. So if we think, is that healthy skin? I don't believe so personally. So I would be going, okay, is that the best option for treating someone and getting a great result anti-aging wise, or would I rather do something like skin needling, for example, that we know that every time we do that, when we perform it correctly, the skin becomes healthier, stronger, and more and better, basically. So yeah, I think everything is okay, but it's just knowing. It's like Roaccutane, you know, it gets such a bad name, but there are definitely skins that need to be on Roaccutane. There are ways that we can support a client through Roaccutane, but, you know, if we have a grade 1 acne, it's probably not the right solution. So it's just about knowing where that fits in to a program.
And I guess too, you know, almost sitting with trends, and we'll touch on trends in a minute, but with things like a plasma pen, you know, for me, it's such a new thing that's come into the industry. You know, it's only really been in Australia for almost the kind of last 12 to 18 months. And you've got to say, okay, will I sit and wait to see what the outcomes are within that kind of 3 to 5 year projection, or do I want to be the first just to have that title of the first person to jump on? You know, like if we kind of think about it as in terms of your cosmetic tattooing, now people are saying, okay, well, microblading with the brows, that's now building up of scar tissue, and hence why we can't continue to do microblading now. We've got to move you into a powder brow, for example. And I feel like it's a very similar vein in that the plasma, it's almost like, okay, is there going to be a tolerance where the skin goes, no more, there's too much scar here. We've now got to transfer you onto something else. So it almost is, you know, sitting and waiting and watching for the results and watching for the performance of each device, and then moving forward from there.
And also thinking about something like plasma, you know, if you have healthy skin and you're going and basically injecting columns of scar tissue into it, this is going to age differently to scar tissue. So it might look great now if you don't get scarring, if you don't get post-inflammatory hyperpigment and all the things that can go wrong. But in 10 years' time, what's it going to look like? Whereas if you've produced healthy collagen and healthy skin, that's a really different equation, because we know that long term that's going to age well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of considerations. There's I think in the skin industry, we get very excited by quick fixes, and I'm still a believer that there's not really such a thing as quick fixes. We can make things healthier, we can make things stronger, we can make things better, but anything that offers it all, probably we need to be a little bit careful of.
Yes, there's no overnight miracle, is there?
No. No.
Talking about trends, what kind of skin trends are you excited about for the future of 2020 and beyond in skin?
I think, and this has been kind of a growing trend over the last 5 years or so, I just get so excited by the fact that we are really looking at skin holistically now. When I started Skin Education International, which was 3 years ago, most people were open to essential fatty acids and a few other things like that, but there weren't many clinics yet working hand in hand with naturopaths. And there also weren't many naturopaths that really understood skin. Like, there were definitely some amazing ones out there, but it wasn't a broad thing. I'm getting more and more naturopaths attending my classes, which obviously means that they're interested in learning more about the skin. And so many of the clinics that I work with have a relationship with a naturopath. They either have one working in the clinic or they have one that they refer clients to regularly. And I think that's really exciting for me, because there's no one, a naturopath can't save the world, a skin therapist can't save the world, a GP can't save the world. But if we can use all of our knowledge together, and if each of us knows when to bring another expert into the equation, that's when we can really give our clients the best outcomes. So I think we, as an industry, we need to keep doing what we're doing, which is stepping away from thinking I'm king, I can solve everything, to going, okay, I'm great, I've done heaps of training, this is what I know. That problem's a little bit out of my scope, so I'm going to bring in Tamara, or I'm going to bring in Asha, or someone else to help. I think that's where we can really take everything to the next level.
Yes, and two, treating within your scope and what you know, and it's okay that you don't know everything. If you see lymphedema, like, don't try and treat that. Please refer it on. If you see something that's hormonal and it's beyond superficial hormonal, show it to a naturopath. There's, sometimes we do have to take our ego out of, the consultation and out of the treatment room and say, well, perhaps I can't fix this, but for the benefit of the client, who can I project them to who is actually going to help? And then the client's going to be so much more thankful that you didn't waste their money, you didn't waste their time, they got a faster result. And that is still heroing you in the treatment room, because you're helping them at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, I think our job is to guide our clients towards a positive solution. And there's so many clinics now that have pre and probiotics, which is awesome, but that doesn't make you a gut health expert. There's a reason why a naturopathy degree is 6 years long, because there's a lot to learn. Skin therapists aren't able to do gut testing, so there's a very good reason why all of those things should be pushed on to someone who really understands that. We, as a skin therapist, we shouldn't be telling our clients to cut out dairy, to cut out gluten. That's a job for someone who's trained in nutrition. So I think, having those right people around you is so powerful.
Incredible. And Lia, there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this episode with you and think, I want her in my space, feeding my brain with all of the knowledge. How can they get access to you for a training session or online?
So all of the dates for the face-to-face classes for 2020 are now on the website, which is www.skineducationinternational.com. There's also a recent Facebook and Instagram post which have all of the links on there as well. Or you can jump onto the website and there's a little tab that says subscribe. And if you subscribe on there, I'll send you a whole heap of information. And that way you'll also be sent out regular updates when things change too. Yeah.
Amazing. And I have one cheeky question that I haven't briefed you on. When was your last skin treatment and what was it?
Well, I don't know if it's classified as a skin treatment, but I'm pretty happy about it. I work with an amazing skin therapist and one of Australia's, or she actually won the Australia's best eyelining tattooist this year. Emma Rose, who's from Thistle and Rose in Subiaco in Western Australia, and she did my brows and my eyeliner with tattooing recently, and she's done such an amazing job. I spend half of my life in the ocean, so for me, tinting and everything gets blonde and washed out. Yeah, she's just changed my life. I don't really like wearing makeup. I'm a bit lazy in that way. So now I literally don't have to do anything. I just wake up and brush my hair and I'm ready to rock. So that was my latest. Yeah. So
Amazing.
Does that classify as a skin treatment?
That's definitely a skin treatment, yes. Lia, thank you so much for featuring on the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to speak with you and being able to provide a platform for you to share all of your knowledge on. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There couldn't be a more kind soul who you can tell genuinely has a passion for education and advancing the industry of treating therapists around Australia. As somebody who highly values education, I think we can never learn too much about the skin, especially from different educators. As we heard, everybody trains and teaches so uniquely, and what you may have heard from one educator, you may understand better or differently from another. Lia and I finished the conversation offline with a little chat about combining her amazing skin knowledge with a beauty event in 2020, so make sure you're following our social pages for more details on that little cheeky plug. To see when and where Lia is training next, or to take a look at the incredible amount of skin therapists she has trained throughout the year, you'll find more by searching for @skin_education_international on Instagram. We, of course, will be hanging out there too across the Chrissy holidays, so if you've loved today's podcast episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you're up to date with the current episodes, and feel free to continue to spread that Christmas holiday cheer by leaving us a little review of today's conversation with Lia. If you're scrolling the gram across your Chrissy break, you might as well scroll onto @BeautyIndustry and myself @TamaraShaw-Reid for all of the beauty behind the scenes action. Have an incredibly fun and safe New Year's. Until next time, stay connected.